Well, housing affordability is number one today, and that's because Labor has announced their shared equity scheme to try and help with the crisis. Now, Scott Morrison has argued that Labor is looking to make money out of this as Anthony Albanese pledges to cut the costs of some mortgages by $380,000. Joining me live now is Liberal MP Jason Falinski. You've been wanting things done about the cost of housing for a very long time. Why isn't this a good idea?
Because, Laura, it doesn't, and by the way, nice to see you again today, it doesn't actually deal with the fundamental underlying problem and what you will be doing, which is supply. So what you will be doing is basically pouring more fuel on the fire, and you'll be increasing the cost of housing yet more, this time in rural and regional areas, because let's not forget the parameters of their policy as we understand it at the moment would mean that no one in Sydney or Melbourne, or indeed most parts of Brisbane and Perth, would be able to have access to this scheme. So what that would actually mean is that you would see a lot more cost pressures coming to bear in rural and regional areas and in cities like Adelaide, Darwin and Hobart.
Why is that?
Because unless you increase supply, the more money you put into this market, there is only one place for it to go, and that is in increased prices.
What are you doing to increase supply?
Sorry, what are we doing to increase supply? Yeah, well, as you know, we had a parliamentary inquiry into this. There were 19 recommendations in that report. One of the key recommendations was that you need to actually have a national competition and policy framework that encourages the states and local governments to A, increase supply, and B, better administer the planning laws they have. So one example that we got, Laura, you've started me now, but for example, we had Indigenous communities in the Pilbara saying that they had overcrowding and a housing crisis in the Pilbara because they didn't have enough housing, because they didn't have enough land on which to build that housing. Now, the only thing the Pilbara has more than land is basically flies. The reason they don't have enough land is because local government, and I guess state government as well, in the Pilbara refuses or has not zoned enough land for them to build housing on. Right. I had a real estate agent the other day say to me, Jason, if you had a magic wand and could halve the prices of houses in this area, that would be great. But that wouldn't solve the problem because no one is selling any houses because there's not enough supply.
Well, you've just proven, you've been in government for 10 years, the Liberal government, that you can't do that much about supply either.
Well, I think our report, which, as you know, was brought down...
The report doesn't increase housing supply, though.
No, it doesn't. But it actually made a number of recommendations. And, Laura, it's all well and good to point at this government and say, well, what have you done? But this is not a problem that happened yesterday. This is a problem that has been evolving since the mid-'80s when planning laws got stricter and started restricting supply. So you have the Productivity Commission of New South Wales saying that we're short 100,000 houses in Sydney alone. You've got NIFIC saying, look, we're probably short something like about 400,000 houses nationwide. We have introduced NIFIC, the National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation, which has been giving subsidised loans to community housing providers to help get more affordable housing into the marketplace. We've been pulling all the levers that we can at a federal level. I think what the report basically says is it's time to go, whoever is there, the time is to go the next step and pull the biggest lever of all, and that is have a national competition framework in which you say to the states, territories, and to a certain extent local governments that unless you are willing to focus on the key metrics of increasing supply in the housing markets in your states and territories, we are basically shutting out a whole bunch of young Australians from their chance to be part of the Australian dream.
Sure. So is that part of your policy platform, re-election platform, and when would it be established and when will it have an effect?
Well, Jason Falinski doesn't have a personal policy platform, but look, we've got 2.5 weeks to go. The Prime Minister knows...
Sorry, we haven't heard a lot about this. So is this part of the government's platform?
No. I mean, this is a report, and we have heard a lot about this. I mean, you and I had a discussion about this on air, I think, just earlier this year. So, we had a very large press conference, well attended. You did a stand-up with me, standing next to someone who just bought their house. It's on my YouTube channel if you want to remind yourself
I
of
know.
it. It was a very good interview,
what
Laura.
shocks
Some
me-
would say too good.
What shocks me is that you think this is such a great idea. You live in a part of Australia that needs this more than most, and this is still not part of your government, your Prime Minister's re-election strategy. Why not?
Well, because we've got 2.5 weeks to go, and I can tell you one thing which is part of our strategy and is part of our policy, and one of the key parts of our values as a party is that we should increase the amount of home ownership that we have in Australia, because it's good for reducing wealth inequality, it's good for childhood outcomes, it's good for mental health, it reduces homelessness, and it's good for democratic stability. And that's what our report showed. So the Liberal Party is the party of home ownership. I mean, that's not news.
Are you saying the announcement is coming? Is that right?
No, I'm not announcing policy on behalf of the Prime Minister today. But what I am saying is that this is something that we've had a very close look at. You no doubt have read all 500 pages of the report, and I'm interested what was your favourite part of it. But the fact of the matter remains,
page 297 is pretty good. But look, let's talk about Labor's
diagram.
Yeah, it's very good. A great graph. Now, Labor's shared equity scheme that's been announced. Look, there are a few details to work out there, but as a principle, is it a good idea?
Look, as a principle, shared equity schemes have been around for 50 years. I don't think it's a good idea for the government to be providing shared equity schemes. I think if financial institutions in Australia wanted to do that, they can do that today. The issue, though, is our policy objective should be to make home ownership easier for working Australians, particularly young Australians. Does this policy achieve that outcome? And the answer is it does not. It also puts the federal government in a very unenviable position, which is it becomes a lender of mortgages to ordinary Australia or to working Australians. And they have to work out whether those mortgages are going into places where there is a proper risk assessment. And already today, we've seen that their initial costings is wrong. That's just the cost of administrating the scheme. They hadn't thought about what happens if someone wants to renovate the home that they co-own. And what we know is it reduces the capacity for people when they own their home to reduce wealth inequality in Australia. And will it make prices go higher? Yes, it will.
Okay, well, we'll explore that another time. Good to see you back on the program. We'll see you soon.
Thanks. Really appreciate it.